Hi guys, Tuga here with a new video, and this video will be a analytics video around the changes for next patch, which would be next week or Wednesday or Tuesday, pretty much depending on the region. And I'm not going to discuss every single point because I think most people already read it. Most people probably already saw a video about it, but I'm going to talk about like concrete things like what does it mean for the specs with the nerfs and buffs that you are going to see next week. And that is something that is not discussed plentiful already because again, some people don't play those specs or some people have no information about it. But I want to talk about specifically Elemental Shaman, Enhancement Shaman, and the healer balancing, and also BM Hunter. BM Hunter kind of got hit pretty hard. Justified, it just justified obviously, because Dark Ranger, Bleak Powder no longer damages its primary target, means that Bleak Powder is not as impressive anymore. It was doing kind of like really good damage, like 500k, 700k, and that is like a addition on your black arrow. So obviously it does a lot of damage. And then you have a reduction on the damage on barb shot, which is not offset in PvP, so it will be 25% less damage. They will be compensated with stomp damage, 50%, which is quite big though. And multi-shot is like a non-factor. Marksmanship Hunter got also a nerf on like Dark Ranger, which is again kind of obvious, but I still think, although Dark Ranger is probably the stronger spec, I do feel like Sentinel is quite good still. So you can always go Sentinel if you feel like Dark Ranger is not doing it for you. They are buffing mistweaver still on all healing, which is great, but they nerf a few things, like for example the mastery gust of mist healing by 20% instead of 60% from Jade Bond. So basically it is like kind of nerfing like fist weaving, like going for a GG build, which is fist weaving with a lot of mastery, was the thing. But right now, like before, fist weaving was about haste, like purely haste, and you don't really care about mastery. But in the War Within, you can actually do that. You can go mastery and still have like the effects from your mastery onto your heals that you would do with your kicks and whatnot. But this is going to be nerfed, so obviously it's not going to be as good. But I still think like the crackling like damage that is healing and the overall healing from mistweaver has always been good. I think the thing that is actually like a bit less interesting for mistweaver is actually getting kicked. Now I do feel like you have now way more tools to be able to play around it, and I do feel like right now mistweaver is actually in a great spot. So if I had to make a tier list right now, it would be quite high. I don't think it's like the best healer though, but it's still like very close to the top. Like a lot of healers are like now kind of together in a lot of sense, because it depends on comps and depends on builds and depends on who you're facing and the soul shuffle lobby in general. Holy Paladin got nerfed like in general. I'm going to show you a bit further down the line. Disc Priest got buffed on the healing from like Flash Heal and Radiance, but they are like primarily healing with Atonement and Shielding. So it's not going to be that impactful, especially since you do see some nerfs a bit like down the line with Oracle. What else? Yeah, Elemental Shaman. This is again the big change of the patch, I think. With BM Hunter, those two were nerfed pretty substantially. I do feel like now people that do go mastery, they kind of regret it. I kind of told you guys, like I was not going to change my whole build. I was still going to play haste and most likely going to play like a second shaman that is going to be full mastery for resto shaman, which will then be able to do the same tests as elemental shaman and enhancement shaman with purely mastery. But as you may see, it got nerfed in PvE, but in PvP it's even more. I'm going to show you. But like Echo Chamber doing less damage on Elemental Overload, so basically instead of like 35% damage with your overloads, so it would be 35% of your original cost. It will be 30%, if I'm not mistaken. It will be 30%, so it's a 5% nerf, I do believe. So it is something that you're going to notice, especially since whenever you're going to do ascendance, that damage is even more nerfed. So it is going to be still good, but it's not going to be like the thing that you want to focus. I think haste is still going to be great, and it was always going to be great, but now it is going to be a clear winner if you had to choose between mastery or haste. Enhancement Shaman though didn't get hurt on nerfs to the PvP part, except the voltaic shock that you're going to see in the PvP section. That's a good thing. I was afraid of nerfs that were maybe not justified. I do feel like Enhancement Shaman is actually strong. I don't think it's meta though. I don't know. Is it meta? I think it depends on like who you're facing, pretty much. I do feel like your damage is very, very good. You're kind of squishy still, and you still rely on like off heals and surviving yourself with Astra Shift and trying to do some pre-defenses before it's too late. So that's a thing. But I still think that like a 2-minute ascendance is like very big for both Stormbringer build and Totemic build. I did make a guide about it, so if you want to check that out, always check that out. But Stormbringer is actually a good build. Like if you want to play Stormbringer, you can still definitely play Stormbringer and do well. Obviously, Totemic is probably the more general way to play Enhancement Shaman because it is way more reliable, kinda. But if you do get uptime, I do feel like Stormbringer is like one of the best with Tempest. I think Tempest is like so great, and having extra wolves and having like that increase amount of damage on your Tempest is going to be quite noticeable if you do get like the uptime. But Totemic is kind of surprising though, like sundering, and then you get like the Totemic pop, and obviously with Ascendance. It's very easy to charge it up as well, so I think it's quite kind of equal, and that's a thing that needs to be for all the specs. So you have like 2 great hero tones that can be interchangeable. I do feel like the current iteration of Totemic is way better than the previous one, so it's a huge win. What else? What else for PvP that I can discuss? I think Demonology Warlock is also quite big. I think it's going to be quite meta. This is like I don't think Felguard like the Grimoire is not going to be that noticeable. It seems a lot, but it was doing like little to no damage, and doing no damage times more damage is still kind of close to no damage. So they have to see, and I think if it was like a 200%, it would be like wow, but this is like just a times 2, so it's not going to be that great. Like instead of doing 40k, it's going to be doing 80k pretty much. I'm exaggerating, but it's very much like around those numbers. Hand of Gul'dan doing more damage is cool, but it's not going to be like game breaking. And Call Dresstalker's damage increase is always going to be fine, and that's going to be the noticeable part with the generating demonic cores, since obviously your demon bolts are now hurting a bit more. That is something you want to play around. Then you have Destruction Warlock, which I'm very happy about. So they're like not buffing Wither, which is cool because again, I'm kind of tired of Hellcaller. But I do like Immolate doing more damage. Do like Chaos Bot to do more damage. I think it crits for 1.6 million, so 10% increase. It would be around 170, something like that, like 176 or something like that. Even more maybe if you had a bit more mastery. So it's cool, it's nice. Incinerate doing 20% more damage is interesting, but I don't think it's enough. I think if it was more around 50% or 40%, that would be more noticeable. Income Flag in PvP not changed, and Rain of Fire 20% is not going to be like game breaking. Now exciting news for the warrior friends of mine. And myself as well, since I do like to play a warrior from time to time. But in the War Within, I'm just not maining it. But there was a time where I was like literally playing it like every single time. Execute damage improved for arms and fury by 10%, which is big because it was already doing a lot of damage, especially for fury. Your demolish is increased by 15%, which is nice. I do think it's still very hard to pull off, but you can still do that. A Slayer strike damage increased by 15%. That is going to be noticeable as well for Fury. Reap the Storm not, but it is what it is. And more strike, overpower, dreadnought, and cleave got buffed by 15% and cleave by 20%. So that's going to be good. It's going to be noticeable, especially since it is PvE, but it rose to PvP as well. I do feel like arms now, they are buffing the damage every single time to the point where it might be a bit like too strong. But I think for the current meta, I think it's still alright. Fury Warrior, Slayer of Strike damage increased by 15%. Mountain Thane, which nobody plays, but I would like to see that change. Lightning Strike damage increased by 30%, and Bloodthirst by 20%, Bloodbath 20%, and Rampage by 10%. Debuffing Fury is a good thing, especially if you're not buffing Odin's Fury, so you have more damage outside of your CDs, but also a lot of damage while you have those CDs. So it's a very good thing in general. Now the most important things. Again, Beast Mastery got nerfed on Bleak Powers, which is now the AoE portion, because you're not going to target the main target with it, so it's good. And Withering Fire's additional black arrows are now cast at 25% effectiveness. It was 50%, so it is a huge nerf. Same for MM as well. They nerfed Mistweaver Jade Empowerment with the Crackling Jade Lightning to chain only to 2 additional enemies instead of 4. Now it's a nerf. It's a decent nerf, to be fair, because you could actually hit pets, which would mean a full heal to everyone, by the way. But it's good. I like Mistweaver being strong, especially with like options like, for example, Crackling Jade Lightning, because I think it's like healthy for the meta. Now I would like to see like all the healers to have like some sort of like doing damage and healing as well, but I don't think they're going to do that. For example, Holy Paladin, it's not very good, especially since it got nerfed again. Avenging Crusader now transfers 200% of damage into healing instead of 260%, and the reasoning behind it is because they're getting buffed on damage, like for example Hammer of Wrath 30%, their Judgment 30%, and Crusader Strike 30%. Lightsmith getting nerfed is not going to be impactful, because I think 90% of the Holy Paladins were playing Herald of the Sun anyways. But the nerf that actually matters a lot is Blessing of Anj. The increased healing on Holy Shock will be 150% instead of 200%. That is the one thing that is very much mattering. And then you have Eternal Flame also nerfed by 10%. Also, not something that you need to overlook, it is the nerf on mana regen. Again, they're yo-yoing the mana from Paladins like every single time. I think like every single patch expansion, they're nerfing it, they're buffing it, they're nerfing it, they're buffing it. They don't even know what they want from Paladins, but that's a nerf. It's going to be noticeable in Soul Shuffle. And then Blessing of Summer now transfers 12% of healing into damage in PvP combat, and it was 18%. I still think Holy Paladin is very strong. It could still be, in my eyes, being a top 1 healer. There is no really a contest from other healers, which is still fine, but I'm okay with that. I think those nerfs are like smart, because you don't want to hit Slidesmith with the nerfs, because they really are not represented. So if they would nerf like Holy Shocks, for example, that would be very terrible for the whole class instead of just Herald of the Sun. So that's a good change. I like it. Disc Priest got a nerf on the Premonition of Solace and the Absorb as well. So that's a great thing. I think it was too strong. I think Oracle is very annoying to deal with, because they don't really cost too much, and shields upon shields upon shields, which is already something that Disc Priest like has, and Oracle just makes it even worse. And then they just try to buff Void Weaving with the Atonement Healing from Void Heart, which is fine. Holy Priest got a buff again on Renew and Prayer of Mending, 20% and 10%, which is fine. But I don't think that's the thing that is lacking. I think doing flash heals, like 600k, 700k is just like not okay. Doing a heal, like the biggest heal possible, is only 1 million if you're not critting. So it is not enough. If you want a Holy Priest to cast, it should be meaningful. And right now it is not meaningful. I think that's the thing that is really getting them not in their place in the meta, I would say. And then you have Shadow Priest. Obviously, you have Wotlk nerfs. So now their healing is reduced to 2% of maximum health in PvP combat and heals for every 3 seconds. So this is weirdly written. Obviously, it's written healing increased to 4% of max health instead of 3%, and then you have Wotlk healing reduced to 2% of max health in PvP combat. So I guess it's also PvE, but like, it's weird because it's on the PvP section. And then you have collapsing void damage reduced by 10% PvP combat. So that's going to be a nerf on the damage. So they're still nerfing this is for Shadow Priest, but I still think like it's kind of weird how it's noted though. But okay, it's fine. So that's like overall a nerf, I think. Right? It's also written as this, so we'll see. So Elemental Shaman got a nerf on Ascendance, now increases the damage of elemental overlords by 25%. So that's what I said. People are going to go for haste now. They might still stick with mastery, but it's not going to be giving the results that you are wanting. And then you have a nerf, like a buff on lightning bolt damage increased by 10%, which is good, especially if you're playing Stormbringer, for example. Yeah, you have still some builds, and again with Stormkeeper, that's also going to scale very well. So 10% is going to be quite noticeable. And then you have Enhanma, the Rolling Earth. Like I said on the guide, you have a buff that you're going to get from Totemic, from the Surging Totem. That makes your Flame Shock, or aka your Voltaic Shock, direct damage to be increased by 300%, and now it's halved in PvP. So it's going to be 150%. So instead of like critting or hitting 1.4 million, it will be more close to 750k, something like that, which is still okay, but it's definitely a nerf. Like, this is like taking away the surprise element from getting a Voltaic Voltaic Shock proc from your lightning bolts or elemental blast, whatever you're playing. So this is like a nerf, but it's not like I'm happy they nerfed this instead of like the other stuff, because it makes it that you can still play Stormbringer, or you can still play Totemic without like feeling like utterly useless, which is good. Then you have Restoration Shaman again buffed, which is a good thing. You want to buff healers that are underperforming. So you have Healing Wave increased by 15%, Healing Surge by 15%, which is going to be casted abilities, which is fine, but it's not going to be enough, I think. I think they need a buff towards Riptide maybe, but it's already very strong. But I think that's the only solution to make it very, very meta. But right now it's not enough, because obviously it just doesn't heal enough, and they have to hardcast pretty much. Then you have Arms Warrior getting a buff on Slam, 40%. I don't know how meaningful it is, because I generally don't press Slam in PvP. And Colossal Smash damage increased by 60%, which is noticeable because you already have a talent that can increase by 30%, plus the 60%. It could actually hurt quite a lot. So I'm actually excited for that change. And they rebuffed, or at least they undid the nerf to Culling Cyclone. So it would increase Playstorm's damage done by 20% per stack. But they nerfed it to 10%, and now they're putting it back to 20%. So that's a good thing. So it means that your Playstorm is actually still going to hurt. You can still play around that, but I don't know if you're playing Slayer or Colossus after those changes. We'll have to see. And they're also unnerfing it in Fury Warrior. So for Fury Warrior, I think Slayer is kind of a no-brainer. There's nothing else to play. So overall, let's resume everything. The huge winners are probably all the other specs that are not Elemental Shaman and BM Hunter. I think those two being very strong is like meta defining. Healer meta, I would say that Holy Paladin is still top 1, but Mistweaver and Disc Priest are very close to each other, with Preservation Evoker as well. And then you have Resto Shaman, which is it's okay. And then you have resto druid, which is for me my wild card. I don't know where to put them. Sometimes I see they are doing well. Sometimes you're seeing them and they're not healing at all, or like they get switched on and destroyed directly. But that's pretty much how I would see the healer meta, with obviously Holy Priest being the lowest rated healer. But that will be probably discussed on my second channel, where I do discuss healer problematics or healer specs, classes, and tier lists and PvP in general. So if you are interested, please do subscribe to the second channel, which the videos are going to come up very shortly. But right now, I'm very happy with the patch. I'm overall very happy. I think they nerfed the right specs and they buffed the right specs. Now, the only spec where I feel like it's a real true slap on the wrist, which is Feral Druid. I know that it's very tempting to nerf a Berserk or Incarnation, but I don't think that's the problem. I think the whole problem is they are dealing too much damage for a very long time. And then you have King of the Jungle being nerfed, which is cool, but it's like coming from 20% to 90% to 20% to 9% is quite big, but I don't think it's enough to like put Feral Druid outside of the S tiers right now. I do feel like it's still S tier and it's going to stay like this, I think. So this is pretty much the things that I would say and discuss. In anything, like in any case, we will have to test it anyways, but I'm very happy about the patch notes, and hopefully this video kind of helped you with the benefits that some specs get from these changes, because again, I can read you for example, balance druid, that Wrath is doing 10% more damage, but what does it mean for the builds? What does it mean for balance druid in general? I didn't talk about balance druid because I feel like it's going to be the same at the end. It's a buff, like a straight buff or straight nerf, but it's not going to be enough to make them like straight up 2 tiers higher or not. But anyways, this is pretty much the end of the video. Thank you for watching the video. I really appreciate you, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. We will catch you all probably very soon in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.